Hello, this is Alfredo Aranda, and today I'm going to teach counterpoint, two-voice counterpoint for SPECIE. Um, we're going to use the Counterpoint and Harmony for Composers book, which is completely bilingual. If you like to follow along with the book, it would be good. You can follow it in English or Spanish, or both if you like to. And we're gonna dive straight into two-voice counterpoint. A two-voice counterpoint is when you have one melody and then you add another melody. How to do that? That's what we're gonna teach. So this is a program that we will follow. First species is going to be when we have a cantus firmus, which is a melody, and then we add a counterpoint, which is a second melody. The cantus firmus could be in the lower voice or in the upper voice, and then we're going to go to second species, third species, fourth species, and florid. And then we're going to do modulation and imitation, and we're going to teach you all those schools techniques that are gonna help you in your composing career or hobby, whatever you want it to be. So the first thing we're gonna do is two-voice counterpoint, first species. And this is one note against another note. Puntus contra puntus. And that's exactly what it means. One note against the other note. What do we do? So the first thing we had to do is we had to create the melody. I have created some melodies in these samples from the book. But before that, we have to review the rules. There are some rules that we have to follow. The first one, most of the time, when I say most of the time, it's not always, but it's most of the time, only consonant intervals are permitted in this species. Well, the consonant intervals are first, third, fifth, sixth, and eighth. Remember, if you don't know what is an interval, you should go back to the theory book, which is the solfeggio and theory book, which I'm also teaching in these videos. Go back there and see what's the intervals and all those scales and chords that you need to learn before you start the counterpoint lessons. So you should already know what's the first, third, fifth, sixth, and eighth if you are reading this book or following these videos. The dissonant intervals are prohibited, and the dissonant intervals are the second, the fourth, and the seventh. Like I told you, it's not all the time, and I'm going to explain the different situations in which you may use a dissonant interval or may not use a consonant interval in certain occasions. So I will let you know as soon as I go or encounter a situation which allows you to do something different. Okay, only the augmented, right here, only the augmented fourth is permitted when resolving properly. It is actually the augmented fourth or the inverted, which is the diminished fifth. The first, in the first measure, the counterpoint note can only be one of the one chord notes. If we're working on the C scale, the one chord notes are C, E, and G. Or you can call them Do, Mi, Sol. Remember, Do, Mi, and Sol are not Spanish. These are international, this is an international way of calling the notes. In fact, it is not even Spanish, it's Latin. And it's used in just about every other country other than the US. So this is Do and Mi or C and E. We're gonna call it by letters today. C and E, which is a third, and it's one of the consonant intervals allowed in this species. Remember, it always needs to start with the one chord. We don't have a complete chord when we have only two notes, but even though you only have two notes, it's the chord is somehow represented. Okay, so the last if you were to write this in the key of G, I have another example here. This I'm writing the D on top right here. So it's a fifth. It's one of the permitted intervals. And then if you were in the key of D, then you would use these notes. And this in this sample, I'm using the D, which makes an octave. Okay, so now that we have the first interval, let's see. Sometimes I'm teaching not in order. I go straight to the important things that you have to learn. For example, what's the last note that you need to learn? In the last note or the last measure, you can only have an octave. You may not have a third or a fifth yet. In the future, you will see that it's allowed, but in order to make a very convincing ending, an octave it's the best option. And then if you are in the key of G, of course, you may also do a first, an interval or first in any key. Of course, it doesn't make a difference what key it is. I'm just giving you different keys or options so you can see the different possibilities. Or in the key of D, I wrote an octave, so I have three different keys. You may do any key you like. I suggest at first that you don't wander in many different keys so you will not get confused. Once you master the rules in one key, then you may do other keys just for your own benefit. But if you are really good at scales and everything, you may also do any other key that you like. All right. In the second to the last measure, you need notes that belong to the G chord or the 5 chord in the case of the C major scale. So, and you also have to follow the rules. It may only be a first, third, fifth, or octave. So it may not be a fourth. It can only be first, sixth, third, fifth, sixth, or octave interval. So in this case, I have a D and a B, and then the B resolves to a C, and the D resolves to a C. Okay. On this sample, on the G scale sample, I have a fifth that resolves into a first. And then on the other key of D, I have a third that resolves into an octave. And notice that I'm always using the 5 chord notes only. Okay, so what is the best thing to do in all the other places? Whenever the 4th and the 7th degree notes are of any major scale are played at the same time, the 4th degree must resolve or move. When I say resolve, that I mean move to the 3rd degree, and the 7th degree must resolve to the 8th degree. Something magical happens when those two notes meet. It's only like the B to the C, it's only half step away, and the F to the E is only half step away. The 7th degree has the tendency to go up because it belongs to the scale of C, and the F, it it has a tendency to go down. So whether you have a fourth or a fifth, augmented fourth or a diminished fifth, the same tendency of movement have these two notes. The F goes to the E and the B goes to the C. And in this case, the same thing, only that the augmented fourth goes in the contrary motion outwards, and the diminished fifth goes inward. All right. So what happens to if you have a diminished fifth and then you follow it by the augmented fourth or vice versa? What happens is that whenever you have something like that, the last augmented fourth or diminished fifth following another diminished fifth or augmented fourth, the last one needs to resolve in the way that we just mentioned just now. So if you have an augmented fourth and then you choose to write a diminished fifth, you only need to resolve the last one. So you may even have several, like whatever amount of augmented fourth, diminished fifth, until you have the last one, and the very last one needs to resolve in the proper way. Okay, there are two movements that are not permitted or prohibited. When you have two consecutive eighths intervals of eighths or fifths, those are not permitted. Those are not good to make a two-voice counterpoint. Also, what's called a direct fifth. If you have any interval in which the two notes move up or down and both of the two notes jump. When I say jump, it means that you are not gradual, like this is a B jumps into a D and the other D jumps into a G. So you see both of the notes go in the same direction, but they're not a fifth to a fifth. It's any other interval goes into a fifth. That's kind of a very rude movement, and it's not very well taken by the ear. And if you go up or down, the same thing. With the fifth or the octave, direct movements like that, even if the lower notes, it's gradual. If as long as the upper note is jumps, it's not a good thing. But if the opposite happens, in which the top note goes gradual up or down, it becomes a good thing then. The top melody, it's very important. That's the first thing you listen to, and so if you go gradual or by step on the top melody, it's a good thing. And also with the sixth or any other interval, or if you go to the octave or to the fifth, if the top one goes down or up gradual, it's a good thing. So it's called a direct octave or fifth because the two voices go either up or down to an octave of a fifth. But if the top one is gradual, it's a good thing. All right, the best movement that you can do, it's the gradual opposite direction. That means that if the cantus firmus or the melody goes up, then the counterpoint, if it goes down, it's a good thing. And of course, it needs to go down to a consonant interval. It just cannot go down gradual to any interval. You have to follow the rules. Like in this sample, I had the C going up to the D So the counterpoint melody went from an E to a D in the opposite direction. And then it continued the D to an E, and then the D on the top to a C. Notice that I'm only using the consonant intervals, third, an eighth, a sixth, and once I arrived to a sixth, I decided to go in the opposite direction from E to D and C to D, and then I went to another octave. And then from D to F, notice that I made a leap. I jumped from D to F, and the other one also. When you jump to a D, to an augmented fourth, diminished fifth, it's really okay. Those are intervals that sound good in any way you approach them. So the only thing that they need to resolve in the proper way. So like in this case, the augmented fourth, the F goes to the E and the B goes to the C. And then we had two parallel intervals of six, which is okay. With the sixths and the thirds, you can practically do anything. You can have as many as you want. And it's not bad. It's not recommended that you use only thirds and fifths. And thirds and sixths, because it becomes very predictable. It's beautiful. It's used many, many, many times in classical and popular music. So, but if you always do the same thing, then you will always be very predictable. So, use all the tools that you have. And then, of course, at the end, right here, we end with an octave. The B went to the C, and the D went to the C. I have some samples of parallel sixths and thirds, which you can use as much as you want. And the melody, I'm using a very short melody, but 8 notes. It doesn't really matter how many notes you use. But for learning purposes, I don't recommend that you use very long melodies. Later, when you start composing some more interesting counterpoint melodies, then you can do so. For now, you can do whatever you want, but short melodies are good because that's what we need to learn and understand how the voices need to move. Okay, you may also have the cantus firmos in the upper voice. You need to start writing the melody like I did right here. The only difference is that you may only do it with the C on top or the fundamental, and you can also only end with the fundamental. And the same thing goes with the counterpoint. You may not have any other interval in the first measure because you need to start. The bottom note needs to be part of the first degree chord. And this is it for two voice counterpoint. And I suggest that you practice counterpoint doing it with one clef, one staff, in the G clef, and then the F clef. You need to practice in all clefs. And then the C third line clef, and then the C fourth line clef. And then you may use two staffs or two staves with the G clef, and then two with the F clef, and then with the C clef third line, and just about any other combination that you may think, like the C clef and the G clef. This is practice. The more you practice, the better. And also notice that I wrote the intervals all the time. At first, until you master this, and when you see these intervals and then you know exactly what they are, I suggest you always write the intervals. So you may see the numbers, and the numbers will help you. And really quick, you may see if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Okay, or it's a good interval or a bad interval. Until you are really good at reading. If you already are a very good, if you read and notice the intervals, and then you may get away without it. But I suggest that even if you are a very good reader, then do it anyway, because this is counterpoint. You're gonna see a whole bunch of different intervals and chords, and labeling them will help you a lot. Anyway, the purpose of these videos are for you to learn. And if you like these videos, if you have any questions, or if there was something that was not clear, let me know. I like to help you. And if you think these videos are helping you, you may share them with friends or anybody you like. Remember, you may follow the rules in English or Spanish, or if you have a friend that speaks the other language and you need to understand what they're saying, or teach them, this is a pretty good book to have. Okay, so I'll see you the next time. I'm gonna do more videos until we do all the voices, and I'm gonna go step by step. So be patient, write your own exercises or samples, and practice. Because if you practice in the right way, you will become a really good composer. And we will do compositions right on the videos live, so you see how easy it is to become a composer. So hope to see you next time. Have a good day.